Harambe the Gorilla. On May 28, 2016, a 3-year-old boy climbed through a barrier at the Cincinnati Zoo and fell 12 feet into the western lowland gorilla enclosure, landing in a shallow moat. 440 pounds of silverback descended in after him. Harambe was 17 years old, and he dragged the child through the water for close to 10 minutes while the crowd above screamed. That's the piece that mattered most biologically, the screaming. Silverback gorillas read sudden, unpredictable noise near small primates as a threat signal, not a cue to disengage, and every scream from the crowd had the potential to push Harambe from confused to dangerous. Zoo officials rejected the tranquilizer, not because they didn't have one, but because a dart takes several minutes to work, and in that window, a 440-pound primate at high arousal is capable of killing a 3-year-old before the sedative takes hold. One shot. The boy survived with minor injuries. Federal inspectors later confirmed the barrier the child climbed through hadn't met AZA safety standards. The institutional equivalent of discovering the door was already unlocked when you're filing the incident report. The internet decided to make Harambe more famous in death than most living animals ever get. A captive animal did what captive animals do. A human paid a price. Harambe paid the final one. Tatiana the Tiger. Christmas Day, 2007. 3 teenagers were at the San Francisco Zoo, and at some point that evening, at least one of them taunted the tiger in her grotto. Tatiana was a 350-pound Siberian tiger, housed in an open-air exhibit with a concrete wall measured at 12.5 feet. Siberian tigers can clear 12 feet vertically from a near standstill. The AZA's recommended minimum for tiger enclosures was 16.5 feet. Nobody at the zoo had apparently put those two numbers in the same sentence before she went over the wall. She stalked and killed 17-year-old Carlos Sousa Jr., who died trying to draw her off his 2 friends, and was still beside his body when police arrived and shot her. First visitor killed by an escaped animal at any AZA-accredited zoo since the association formed in 1924. The open-air grotto design had been in place for years, described at the time of construction as a naturalistic and progressive enclosure philosophy. The tiger was not consulted on the dimensions. That wall had been 4 feet short of standard since the day it was built. She was killed inside her own zoo, beside the body of the boy she just stalked across 2 enclosures. Travis the chimp. There is a long, specifically American tradition of bringing wild primates into domestic spaces, raising them on human food and human habits, and then expressing complete shock when they eventually behave like primates. Travis was a 200-pound male chimpanzee who had lived in Sandra Harold's Connecticut home since infancy. He drank wine, used the toilet, appeared in Coca-Cola commercials, and had his own television schedule. On February 16, 2009, Harold's friend Charla Nash arrived at the house. Something about the visit agitated Travis, who had been given Xanax in his tea that day for behavioral problems, and he attacked Nash for 12 minutes, removing her hands, her nose, her lips, and both eyes. Harold stabbed him with a kitchen knife and called 911. When officers arrived, Travis opened the driver's door of the patrol car before being shot through the chest. The physiological explanation was not a mystery to any primatologist. Male chimpanzees reach between 5 and 7 times human muscle strength at adulthood. Tame isn't a stable behavioral state in a chimp. It's a developmental window, and it closes. Travis was raised to behave like a human, became a fully adult chimp, and then behaved exactly like one. He died inside the same enclosure he'd lived in for 14 years, shot through the chest by a cop sitting in his squad car. If you're finding these cases as wild as I am, this is the kind of content I put out regularly. A subscribe would mean a lot. Thanks. Johnny the Bear. Most zoo visitors have no idea that every accredited zoo in the country maintains a team whose sole purpose is to kill animals quickly in emergencies. Not tranquilize, kill. On December 21, 2022, at the Jacksonville Zoo and Gardens in Florida, a 5-year-old North American black bear named Johnny escaped a back-of-house holding area that no visitor ever sees, found a 35-year-old keeper in a service corridor, and mauled her, leaving deep lacerations on her head, back, and thighs. The zoo's emergency response team deployed. A team member fired 4 12-gauge shotgun rounds. Head, chest, back. Johnny died. Black bears tend to be underestimated relative to grizzlies because they're smaller and more avoidant in the wild. That's accurate for most black bears. Johnny was a 250-pound black bear in a service corridor, which is the wrong end of the black bear behavioral spectrum entirely. The phrase lethal weapons team is standard zoo terminology, not invented for dramatic effect. It describes a standing protocol that every major accredited institution maintains, and most zoo visitors learn about it the same way everyone found out about Johnny, through a news alert at the end of the year. Modern zoos have a literal kill team on payroll. Johnny is why. Eko the Tiger. On December 29, 2021, a contract cleaning worker at the Naples Zoo in Florida reached his arm through a fence to touch a tiger. Not a zookeeper, a contractor who had bypassed a public safety barrier and pushed his arm through the interior fencing. Eko grabbed it and wouldn't release. A Collier County deputy arrived and shot Eko with his sidearm. Eko was 8 years old and a Malayan tiger, a critically endangered subspecies with fewer than 200 individuals left in the wild at the time. You could seat the entire surviving wild population of Malayan tigers in a single college classroom and still have empty rows. The genetic math for a population that small is unforgiving, and every loss makes recovery harder. When a cleaning contractor is the last line of defense between a critically endangered subspecies and a fatality, the system has clearly developed some gaps. The trespasser later said he just wanted to interact with the animal. He just wanted to pet it. He had cleared a public barrier, breached an exhibit fence, extended his arm into the space of an apex predator, and his explanation was that the tiger seemed approachable. A subspecies the size of a small high school class lost one member to a man with a cleaning cart. Tyke the Elephant. On August 20th, 1994, at the Neil Blaisdell Arena in Honolulu, Hawaii, a Circus International elephant named Tyke killed her trainer Alan Campbell in front of a live audience during a performance, then walked out of the building and ran. For more than 30 minutes, an 8,000-pound African bush elephant moved through the Kaka'ako business district while police responded. There is no department protocol that begins 2 officers, service pistols, 8,000-pound elephant in a business district, because the assumption is that situation simply doesn't occur. 2 officers fired 87 rounds before she collapsed from accumulated blood loss, which is less a marksmanship problem than a physics one. An African elephant's skull isn't solid bone, but a complex lattice of thick material and air pockets, and standard handgun calibers don't reliably reach the brain from most approach angles. The entire sequence was filmed live by news crews and became one of the most widely shared records of what working conditions in American circuses actually looked like. Documented beatings from the years prior to the incident were part of the court record. None of that came up in the official response. She died on a Honolulu street, on camera, riddled with bullets, and ended American circus elephant performances as a category. Jabari the Gorilla. Nobody, not the primatologists, not the structural engineers, not the security team that reviewed every frame of footage, can fully explain what happened at the Dallas Zoo on March 18, 2004. Jabari was a 13-year-old western lowland gorilla. The enclosure wall was 16 feet of smooth, inward curved concrete, engineered specifically to eliminate grip points and defeat bipedal jumping. The security cameras have footage of Jabari on one side of the wall, then footage of him on the other, nothing in between. Primatologists have a category for this: things gorillas theoretically cannot do that gorillas have done anyway. The list is short. Jabari made it. He injured 4 people during a 40-minute run through the zoo, including a 3-year-old toddler, and when officers cornered him, he was still holding the child's white sandals. He was shot. The engineering firm couldn't reproduce the escape in simulation. Researchers proposed an overhanging tree branch as a possible mechanism, but no one confirmed it. The current working consensus from the primate biomechanics community is essentially that the escape was physically implausible and happened anyway, which is one of those sentences that starts fine and keeps getting worse. The first US zoo gorilla shot dead in over a decade, and the one nobody can explain how he escaped. The Zanesville Massacre. On the evening of October 18, 2011, Terry Thompson opened every cage on his 73-acre property in Muskingum County, Ohio, then killed himself. Deputies arrived at sundown to find a breached perimeter and empty enclosures. 18 Bengal tigers, 17 lions, 8 bears, 3 mountain lions, 2 wolves, plus primates, all loose, moving toward residential areas at dusk. Tranquilizers were ruled out. The drugs take 5 to 10 minutes to work. An agitated Bengal tiger doesn't hold still while the sedative acts, and this was happening in the dark, at the edge of suburban neighborhoods. Deputies hunted through the night with rifles and flashlights, property by property, and by morning, 48 animals were dead. 18 Bengal tigers had been held on that one private property at a time when the entire global wild Bengal tiger population was estimated at around 3,200 animals. Ohio had no meaningful exotic animal regulations at the time. The closest thing America had assembled to a private collection of the world's most endangered big cats in private hands in rural Ohio ended with a county sheriff and a flashlight. One night, 48 animals. The single largest captive animal killing in US history, and the reason Ohio finally regulated exotic pet ownership. Topsy the Elephant. January 4th, 1903, at Luna Park on Coney Island, and tickets had been sold for what was about to happen. Topsy was an Asian elephant who had spent decades in American circuses and had killed 3 handlers over the course of her career. The third had fed her a lit cigarette while she was working. After the third death, her owners declared her unmanageable and arranged a public destruction, and Coney Island charged admission. The ASPCA objected to the original plan of hanging on grounds of cruelty, and the Edison Manufacturing Company proposed electrocution instead, volunteering to film it for commercial release. Topsy was first fed carrots laced with 460 grains of cyanide, then fitted with copper-lined sandals connected to a 6,600-volt alternating current line. She was dead in about 10 seconds. The film was shown to paying audiences. For most of the 20th century, the footage was attributed to Thomas Edison personally, connected to his campaign against alternating current during the so-called War of Currents. Current historical scholarship holds that Edison didn't personally arrange the execution. His company filmed it, distributed it, and profited from the screenings. Whether Edison personally attended is apparently what separates him from the story. She was the only one of this entire story whose killing was formally advertised with a ticket price and a published time. The Ningbo Tiger. On January 29, 2017, a 40-year-old man climbed over 2 3-meter walls and a wire fence to enter the tiger area at the Ningbo Yungor Zoo in China. His reason was to avoid the entrance fee. The entrance fee was 130 yuan, about $19, a financial calculation that apparently did not include a tiger variable. Once inside the enclosure perimeter, he was grabbed by a tiger and mauled in front of a crowd, while zoo staff deployed firecrackers and water cannons. Neither worked. The reason is basic predator biology. A tiger in active predation mode doesn't startle. The firecrackers and water cannons were the zoo's way of demonstrating they'd tried everything, which they had. The tiger demonstrated it didn't care. The man was eventually freed when the tiger was shot. He survived with serious injuries. On Chinese social media in the days that followed, an overwhelming majority of commentary argued that the wrong animal had been killed. Not as a fringe position, as the prevailing public verdict. The sentiment was that a man who scaled multiple security barriers to save $19 bore more responsibility for what happened than the tiger that responded to a person entering its space. One man saved $19. One tiger lost its life. a nation collectively decided who was the bigger fool. Mary the Elephant. On September 13, 1916, the town of Erwin, Tennessee, hanged a 5-ton elephant from a railroad crane, and 2,500 people came to watch, including most of the town's children. On the day it happened, her new handler, Walter "Red" Eldridge, on his second day of work, was walking her through Kingsport when she reached for a watermelon rind by the road. Eldridge prodded her with a bullhook to redirect her, striking what later turned out to be a severely abscessed tooth. She threw him to the ground, and he died. The circus owner arranged a public execution by hanging from an industrial derrick owned by the Clinchfield Railroad. The first chain snapped, dropping her roughly 10 feet onto her hip and breaking it. The crowd waited. They hoisted her again. She died on the second attempt. The town of Erwin apparently concluded that hanging the elephant from the railroad crane was the obvious and proportionate response. The post-mortem exam found a severely abscessed tooth that had been causing her chronic pain. She'd been a 5-ton elephant with an untreated dental abscess and a new handler who accidentally struck the wound. Across 119 years, from the first case in this story to this one, the same pattern held. A captive animal did what captive animals do. A human paid a price, and the animal paid the final one. They hanged her from a railroad crane in front of toddlers, then learned the next morning she had a toothache. Erwin, Tennessee is still trying to live it down a century later. If any of these sent you down a rabbit hole, this is what the channel covers. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one.